purchase on the ticket. I got a call from Rabbi Kaplan. Okay, Zokt the Heilige Mishnah. Omra Parazu. The para said, the cow said, Hareini Nazira, I will be a Nazira in my medesani. Omer Hadela says the Della said, Hareini Nazir im Niftachani, if I'm open. So a cow said, I'm going to be a Nazir, and the door said, I'm going to be a Nazir. So the cow was talking and the door is talking, but cows can't talk, and neither can doors. So the Gemara is going to, and that's going to be the very first kasha. Para mikam ishtoi, can a cow talk? So let's go back to the beginning in the Mishnah and discuss what we're really talking about. Yesterday, and I forgot the Chazer yesterday's Gemara, which is going to be very relevant today. Yesterday, we had a discussion about what if someone says already Nazir, and then he says minhag roigresh and minhag vela, which are things that have no shaykhis to Naziris. So the Gemara ended up explaining that the machloikis between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, at least in the Mishnah's version of whether or not he becomes a Nazir, is totally in whether or not you could be shoyal on hektish. And the Gemara said everybody holds with Reb Meir that ein adam moichi dvarav levatala. So everything he said he meant. And we also have a locha, we pass on like a Yosy, that the Gemar dvar of adam nitfas. So you have to also take seriously the second thing that he said, not only the already Nazir, but also the minhag roigresh. And therefore we look at it like it's, thank you so much, Toby, like it's somebody who was makabel Naziris, and in Toich Kedei Dibur, he decided he doesn't want to be a Nazir anymore. So it's like Nidrayu Pischai Imai. We said that Beis Hillel holds Nidrayu Pischai Imai is a good Pesach, and therefore we say that he's not a Nazir. It's like he said, I want to be a Nazir, I changed my mind. So therefore he's not a Nazir. But Beis Shammai holds, since you cannot be Chayzer, since you cannot be Shoyal on Hektish, and the Naziris is like Hektish, once you say, I want to be Nazir, it's too late at that point to say I changed my mind. That was what we learned yesterday. Today, we're just going to learn another example of the same case. So the cow talking is just a diversion, but the focus on it is that it's the same case. So now we just need to understand what the case is to see how it fits into yesterday's Gemara. So I'm going to try reading the Gemara, the Mishnah again. And I'm going to read it a little differently by explaining it. There's a cow that jumped over the moon, and then it fell flat on the floor, and it couldn't get up, because after a jump like that, it can't move. So there's a cow, so the jump on the moon part, the jumping over the moon, I just dreamt up from my childhood memories. But there was a cow that was stuck on the floor, it couldn't get up. And it told itself, Omra Parazu, the cow told itself that there's no way I can get up. And the Rambam says in the Pirush Mishnayos that to us this sounds very weird, but in those days, that's how people used to speak. And the cow said, if I'm so sure that I can't budge, if I get up, I want to be a Nazir. Now, cows can't talk. So Tosfos brings out that you find that there's a figure of speech. When I look at something and I think to myself what that person or what that thing is probably thinking about, it's as if that person is thinking it. We can express it that way. So I started with the talking fish and square. That's exactly what I started with today. Because you were making me coffee, so thank you very much. Okay, whatever the fish had to say wasn't as important as my coffee, so thank you. So if you look at the Ran,
there's actually a word for that in English.
Projection.
Anthropomorphism, something like that, is you project.
Anthropomorphism.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Don't ask me how to spell it either. but once you project human characteristics to an animal.
So where do you find this? We actually find a similar thing in Yoina. When the ship was shaking and in the storm and it was about to fall apart, the pasuk says, "V'ha'aniya chashva li shaver." The ship thought that it was going to break apart. Ships are inanimate. Ships cannot think. So "v'ha'aniya chashva li shaver" is again, it was the way people spoke. Everyone knew, everyone felt that the ship is about to fall apart. And they were thinking that the ship is about to fall apart. But using that word that we can't, that's hard to pronounce, that David just brought up, anthropomorphism, using that word, that's exactly what this is. People looked at the ship, this ship is going to fall apart. The way it was expressed was V'ha'aniya chashva li shaver. So now that we know that there's this figure of speech where I will express something as if an inanimate or something that cannot think has thoughts, now we'll look at the Mishnah again with another bit of information. Amar Amra Parazu. This para said that I should be a Nazir if I would stand up. And the para is so sure can't get up. The para saying, if I stand up, I'll be a Nazir, because he knew he would never be able to stand up. And then the person says, Hareini Nazira, I want to separate myself from this para. I want to separate myself from this para. Tosha says Nazira with a mapeke, I want to separate myself with this para. Im oimedes ani. Im oimedes, if the para stands up by itself, ani, I want to become usher to this para. So in short form, after we peel away all the distractions, he said, I want to be a Nazir from this para. So just like in the last Mishnah, he said, I want to be a Nazir from what was the lashon of the Mishnah? Nagroigers from Nedvela. Here he said, I want to be a Nazir from a para. That is the bottom line. It's a simple case of exclaiming Nazirs, of proclaiming Nazirs, but talking about a prohibition of something that has nothing to do with Geffen. And therefore, it's exactly the same shaila of Bishama and Basil. Or there's something with the door. There was a door that was jammed shut. You're yanking on it, you can't get it open. It seized. So on the Oimer, Hadelas Hazeh, this Delos is saying, the Delos is saying, if I open up, I'll be a Nazir. In other words, I'll never be able to open up. And the person says, I already Nazir, im niftachani, I should become a Nazir. Once again, I should become a Nazir, I should be separated from the door. Nazir, because it's exactly the same principle as we had in the last Mishnah. It's already Nazir with an immediate chazara. It's nidra upitzcha imay. Beishamai says you cannot be shoyal on hektish, and Beisila holds you can. So just if we're in the subject, if we're in the topic about talking about inanimate things, thinking and talking, it's very interesting because there, if I'm not mistaken, the Kazari says, Raza spoke out, I don't want Kazari. He says that La'asad Lavai, behemoths are actually going to be able to think and do things. Nowadays, how does a behemoth become this Allah? If a mitzvah is done with it, right? A behemoth wants to be brought as a korban, a behemoth wants a bracha to be made on it, but La'asad Lavai, behemoths are going to become wise as well. And not only that, how about the stars and the moon? Do they have thoughts? Do they have self-awareness? Do they know what they're doing? A malach knows what he's doing. A malach might not have bechira, but a malach knows what he's doing. So in Hilchis Yosy Atayra, talking about English words that we don't know how to pronounce, in Hilchis Yosy Atayra, Per Gimel, Halacha Tes. Look at this Rambam, pretty fascinating. Kol HaKaychavim v'Hagalgalim, all of these stars and the Galgalim, I guess that means planets or other celestial beings. Kulam Balei Nefesh Videya V'Haskelheim. They have seichel, they have thoughts, they have knowledge. The Heim Chaim v'Oimdim, they're alive and they're standing. Umakirim es Misha Amar v'Haya Olam, and they're not inanimate. They actually recognize and appreciate their Rebbeinu Shalom's presence. Kol echad ve'echad lefi gadloi ulefi ma'alosoi. And each one of these celestial beings, based on its greatness and its madrega, Mishabchim umefarim liyotzim. They actually say shvach v'aydah to their Rebbeinu Shalom, kimay hamalachim, just like malachim. Uchashem shemakir mes hakadosh baruch Hu, the same way they're makar hakadosh baruch Hu, kach makir mes atzman. They're self-aware. Umakirim es hamalachim shalom aylam. They also recognize the malachim that are greater than them. And now we have the pecking order. V'das ha'kechavim b'galgalim me'uta midas hamalachim u'gedoyla midas b'nei adam. So the stars and the moon and the sun and the planets, they have more knowledge, they have more das than we do. So they have feelings and they know what's going on. And so when you see in the nursery rhymes the moon smiling because the moon is happy. And they have more awareness than we do. Again, I don't know exactly what this means, but this is what the Rambam says. It's pretty awesome. So as much as we think it's a joke, animals can't talk, Shenayimul, these people can talk. It's unbelievable. Okay, that was just as an aside. The Valta Mishnah took us on a diversion. I hopped a little bit of a diversion. But after all the diversions, our Mishnah at first glance is just simply a repeat of the last Mishnah that we had. And just like in the last Mishnah, Rav Yehuda interjected and said that the question is not whether or not the person is a Nazir, the question is whether or not the person is answering himself from the Dvela, if something is answering himself from the Gregris. So here too, Rav Yehuda is going to say, the question is if the person is answering himself from the Behema. And Beis Shammai holds it's Osir, him to have enough from this Behema, and Beis Hillel holds it's Mutter. Amar Rav Yehuda, Av Geshomer Beis Shammai, Hareni Nazir, that's only if he said that the para should be offered to him, the para will be offered to him in my medicine. So let's see the Gemara. Para mikamishtoy. Can a cow possibly talk? Let me explain to you what happened over here. This para was collapsed on the floor, not able to stand up. The Omar, and he said, Kisvura, I think parazu eina imedes. This para will never be able to stand. Hareni nazir mi besara imamda. I want to be a nazir from its meat if it stands up. Me'eleha on its own. I want to be a nazir if this para is able to get up on its own. So this is literally, it's literally a repeat of yesterday. Instead of Hareni Nazir from the Vela, from Gregris, it's Hareni Nazir Mibasara. The only difference here is there's a T'nai involved. I only want to be this Nazir if the animal stands up on its own. But Amda Me'elah, and what do you know? The animal stood up on its own. V'holchu b'shamai l'shitasan, u'besil l'shitasan. And Bishamai and Basil are taking exactly the same position that they took yesterday. Bishamai da'amri min ha'groigish u'min ha'dveila have a Nazir, ha'chanami kamer mi b'sara have a Nazir. U'besil l'imrim loy have a Nazir. Fact Gemara, what an unbelievably creative case, how exciting this is. But v'ha'amru b'shamai chadazimna. Didn't we learn this sugya yesterday? Why do we need to repeat the same sugya, the same achloikis between Bishamai and Basil another day? Amarava tarti tlas. Never mind that it was repeated twice, it was repeated a third time. In other words, we have the case of Gregris, we have the case of Para in our Mishnah, and we even have the case of the door in our Mishnah. Tarti tlas, tarti tlas. Utrichi. There was a need for the Mishnah to express this machlokes 3 times, because in each of these 3 times there's a chiddush here that is displayed. The Itmar Baha, if we only had the Mishnah that we learned yesterday, Gregors who the Vela, Hasam who the Amri Beishamei Havi Nazir. Only by Gregors and the Vela do we say that a person becomes a Nazir. Mishum the Michlef and Banovim, because they're also fruits, they're also from the Shemus Haminim, and we learned even sometimes you eat them, you can get drunk. They're similar to Adovim. So therefore, it's not so clear that it's such a wrong lotion. It could be close. well, there's no connection, but people can get confused. Right? We even learned in the beginning Tosis that Tirosh could even be a kinui for Tvela. Yeah, there's no connection to Naziris, but people could confuse them. That's all it means. There's no connection between figs and Naziris other than people might confuse them. Okay, in economy, that's why Beis Shammai holds that that's an expression of Naziris. Avol basar ba'novim, but who's going to mix up meat with grapes? Lo michlav, it's too far away. Maybe there, if someone said already knows me basar, maybe Beis Shammai would be moided that it's not a good Naziris. But you can look at it on the flip side. The itmar basar hachahu da amri Beis Shammai havi nazir. You know why? Bebisra v'chamra. Everybody knows that wine and meat are two integral parts of a Suda. They go together. There's a synergy between them. There's a connection. So maybe that's why it's a valid expression of Naziris. Avol Groigers of the Vela, which have nothing to do with Naziris, as Duvi mentioned, Loi, Kamash Malon, that in both cases, Beis Shammai still holds that it's a not. They eat Mahani Tarti, but even once we have both, Groigers Tevela and B'Shiv V'Chamra, Hani Hu Dekami Beis Shammai. They, in each case, you can describe some similarity, some reason why someone would confuse it with wine, with Naziris. Groigers and Tevela, like we said, Basar, like we said, Avodelas, a door has no shaykhs to Naziris. Ema Moidi, sorry? No, he said, I want to be a Nazir from the meat of the cow. I want to be a Nazir from the meat of the cow if the cow stands up. Well, we have to have a lot of massaging to make the words in the Mishnah mean what Rami Bar Chama says it means. And don't worry, when Rava comes along with his drop, we're going to need even more massaging to make it mean what the Gemara is projecting that it means. But the Rambam saves us from all these problems because this whole thing is so weird to us. The Rambam said that's how people spoke in those days. People had weird ways of expressing themselves. If you see a cow on the floor, is that what you're going to say? I'm going to come and the cow is saying that he's a Nazir if he won't stand up. Like, we don't speak that way. So it's hard for us to understand these things. Yeah, that's right. Avaldelas, but a door which is so no shaykhs to anything to do with Naziris. Maybe the Beis Shammai would be moida that it wouldn't be a Naziris. So that's why we needed these three cases. So for the Gemara, so just have the case of Delas. If Beis Shammai holds even in the case of Delas, it's a good Naziris. Surely in the other cases, Zok the Gemara, Vitana Delas, I would say the opposite. V'hakami Beis Hillel. That's where Beis Hillel said it's not a Naziris because Delas has no shaykhs. But in the case of Dvela or in the case of Basar, maybe that would be a good expression of Naziris. So this is the first pshat in the Mishnah, the pshat of Rami Bar Chama. Rava has a very big problem with understanding the Mishnah this way. Because what is the Tanai that he said? If this cow does not stand up by itself, I'm making a Naziris. That was the Tanai. The problem is, I'm sorry? If it does stand up, right? But it doesn't say that. It's missing. It says, and it doesn't mean stand up, it means stand up by itself. For me, if it's a question of me standing it up, that you never make a neder with a t'nai. If I do something, then I'll be a Nazir. If you want to be a Nazir, be a Nazir. The whole part is you're making a tax, something else happens, right? Everyone knows the famous story with the three workers who came with their lunchbox every day to the work site. The Portuguese opens it up and sees he has a tuna sandwich. It's a famous joke we had when we were little kids. Remember the word? The Portuguese opens up and sees a tuna sandwich. She says, again, my wife gave me tuna. I'm done. If I have tuna one more day, I'm throwing it out. I can't handle it. The next guy, the Italian, opens it up and he's got a peanut butter sandwich. Again, peanut butter. If she gives me peanut butter one more day, done. Throwing it out. Throwing it out. And then there's the then there's the Schwartz. And he says, opens it up, and what does he have? He has salami sandwich. Salami again, Vive salami one more day, and throw it in the garbage. So the next day, the Portuguese opens up his lunch bag, and sure enough, it's tuna. He just chucks it in the garbage. The Italian opens up his lunch, and in fact, it's peanut butter. Chucks it in the garbage. The Schwartz doesn't even open up his lunch. Again, salami, and he throws it in the garbage. So they asked him, how do you know it was salami? You didn't open it. He says, yeah, but I made it myself. So of course I know it. So the same thing over here. You're not going to make a Tanai, if I do something, I'll be a Nazir. It doesn't make sense. The Tanai would be if the animal does something on its own. But the problem is, Frek Rabba, doesn't say that in the Mishnah on its own. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rabba, Mikotani, Im Amda Me'elaha. It doesn't say the Tanai was an Amda. It says in Mamedas. So you're now changing the words in the Mishnah. That pshat doesn't fit in. So David wasn't comfortable with it fitting in. David. Well, no, because if you learn Hareini Nizira is a mapike, I am separating myself from it, right? But the problem is it doesn't say that in the Delos case. But I'll call upon him. Rabba's problem is that Me'ileh. Frek Tosh is that's your problem. So say Chasur Mechsera. We always say Chasur Mechsera. So what's the big deal? So there's a fascinating Yosy from Tosfos when we say Chasur Mechsera and when we don't say Chasur Mechsera. So let's have a peek at the Tosfos inside. Tosfos inside says as follows: Vim Taimar, Umay Kasherle, Mikatani Me'eleh. What's Rabba's big problem that it doesn't say Me'eleh? Well, Kama Mishnayis, the Mishaninan Chasur Mechsera Bachigdani. Say there's a Chasur Mechsera. So I'm about 8 lines from the bottom in Tosfos. The Yeshloimar and for Tosfos, the Hanamili, when do you say Chasur Mechsera? Heicha the Muchach HaChisorin. I once said over from Reb Mendel that Chasur Mechsera isn't an editing mistake. It's the reason why the Mishnayos were written down is because of Eis Lasos L'Shem Eferus Eresecha. People were forgetting, so they were forced to write it down. But they only write that. Rebbe only wanted to write the bare minimum, where through Pilpul you'll be able to extract the full meaning of the Mishnah. So he only wrote what he had to. So where it's Muchach HaChisorin, where you'll be able to clearly see what's missing, then Oz Yesh Koyach L'Hoysav Aloshna Mishnah, then you can argue Chasur Mechsera, because that's exactly how it was designed. Aval Lefirish the Rabbi Bar Chama, but the way Rabbi Bar Chama is learning pshat in our Mishnah, Loi Muchach Klum, you don't see anything. The Mishnah Chaser Me'elaha, that the word Me'elaha is missing in the Mishnah. Kivan the Eina Toila Machloikas Atanaim Kalal, Bamidus Apara. The whole story about it standing up to Tanai is merely a sideshow. The main show is that there's a Shaila of Beishamai and Basil, where someone said, I'm a Nazir for meat. So if the main show something was missing, Mamela, you would be able to say that. But this is a sideshow. And Lakala Machloikis is benoider minabosar ichayla linaziris lakal mililoi. The sideshow, the Tanai, is not the main focus of the Mishnah. There, you're not going to say Chasur Mechsera because it won't be obvious that that is what's missing. Lekach parach mikatani me'ela. That's why Rabbi says, I don't like Rabbi Bar Chama's pshat, because even in the sideshow, you're missing words based on how you're describing the narrative. The Engle the house of Allah Shana Mishnah, kiven delay muchach miplukta ditanoi the chaser. Unless in the main point of the Mishnah, it's obvious that something's missing, we will not say Chasur Mechsera. So because of that, Rabba does not like Rabbi Bar Chama's pshat, and Amar Rabba, a different shot. Before Rabba was even able to get his words out, he was cut down. And what were his words that he started to say? Same story, same pre-story as Rabbi Bar Chama. This par is lying down. And he said, Hare alai carbon. I'm accepting upon myself a carbon. What type of carbon? What type of carbon? A carbon, he wants to bring the par as a carbon. And we're soon going to see what type of carbon it is. but I'm going to read the second to the last line, or the third to the last line in Tosfos in Paimer. Babelishin the Masnisin Katani Harani Nazira. The Hechim Ishtama carbon. Where are you talking about a carbon? It's not Harani Nazira. It doesn't say Harani carbon. V'yeshloimet the Hachikamar Harani Mavia Becarbon Naziris Imla Amda. When he said Harani Nazira, he meant I'm going to bring this animal as a carbon. What type of carbon? A carbon of Naziris. So in fact, it's a Kabbalah's Naziris. V'yafal Gav. In fact, Tosfos, we have a major complication. The Karbonis Nazir einam boyim behemagasa. You never ever bring a para as part of the process of the Karbonis of a Nazir. Zok Gemara, you're right. Zok Tosfos, you're right. Hanamidi chayvosef shel Nazir. That's the direct process, the direct chiyuv of a Nazir. But abel hoyu regilin lahavi nidar minidavos im Karbonis Naziris. The minig was when a Nazir was discharging his Naziris, it would be a whole celebration for him, and he would actually bring a whole bunch of additional karbonis that aren't directly part of the process, but he brings them in celebration. So, getting back to Rava, there's a para lying on the floor, and the person says, I'm going to accept upon myself to bring this para for a carbon of Naziris, meaning the accompanying carbonos that I'll bring after the Naziris is discharged. Correct the Gemara, right off the bat, we're cutting Rava down before Rava gets a chance to develop his thought. Bishlama para bas carboni. You'd be able to explain that's what he meant in the case of para. Veladeles bas carboni. What did he say? I'm going to bring the deles as a carbon? That doesn't make sense. So this narrative simply doesn't fit. Ella Amar Rava. So Rava has to backtrack and elaborate more. Kigoyin shows a para revutza lefana. There was a para that was lying flat on the floor. It was unable to stand. The Omar, and he said, Hareni Nazir miyayin. I should be a Nazir from yayin im loy omda. If it won't stand up. The omda me'eleha, and it stood up by itself. So let's stop here for a moment. Now the way, I'm sorry. So now we're going to have to read the words of the Mishnah again. Omar, he comes along and he sees this para, his para is lying there on the floor, it cannot budge. And he said, again, he's still projecting. It's the same figure of speech where he's projecting that this animal can't get up. Omar parazu, Hareni Nazira, he's saying, I'm a Nazir, I should be a Nazir, imay medes, if the animal is able to stand. And then it stood on its own. So that's how Rav is learning it. And the same with the door. I'm going to be a Nazir if the door will open. So let's see how this fits in, because we still have to overcome some challenges. V'amar hareni Nazir miyayin. I should be a Nazir from yayin. So unlike how we were learning until now, that he's saying I want to be a Nazir from a basar, here he's saying I want to be a Nazir from yayin. It's a proper expression of Naziris im loy amda if it doesn't stand up. The amda me'eleh, and it stood up by itself. So now the question is this real? The question merely is, was the Tanai triggered or not? It's not a question anymore having to do with the previous Mishnah. It's simply a question of if the Nazirus is triggered. Beishamai Savri, Turfei, the High Gavra, Mishum Ilkma Biyadehu. It's like any Tanai. And the question here was the Tanai triggered. So when this guy said, Imamdo, you know what he meant? This animal, there's no way this animal is standing up by himself. But I'm pretty sure that with my great muscle, I'll be able to get this animal on his feet. And he said, I should be a Nazir. I'm so sure I'm going to get it up. I'm going to get it up, and if I can't get it up, I'm going to be a Nazir. That's what he said. The Amdo Me'elah. But he didn't get it up. The cow by itself got up. So the question is, did this trigger the Tanai? Beishamai Savri, Torfei the Haigavra, Mishum Ukmoy Biyadehi. Toirif is like in a star, there's a typus and a toirif. The toirif is the main information of the star. So here, what was his main focus? His main focus is that I'm a tough guy, I can get it to stand up. He didn't fulfill the Tanai, therefore he's a Nazir. And he didn't stand it up and stood up by itself. With still survey, no, this didn't fulfill his night because the whole problem is that it's lying down. He shouldn't reveal. He just didn't want it to be on the ground anymore. But Kamesh got up and didn't fill this night. So it has nothing to do anymore with the previous Mishnah. It's just a weird Tanai, and the machlekes is in such a weird Tanai, was the Tanai triggered or not? According to Beshila, it wasn't triggered because it ended up getting up. And according to Beshama, it was triggered because the focus of the Tanai was that I have to get it up. Now, there's one problem with this. It says here, Rob is saying that the fellow said already knows if it doesn't stand up. How does that fit into the lashon of the Mishnah? The Mishnah says Harani Nazir in my medas. So there's a big loy that's missing, right? Is that not a problem? So Tosfos asked the kasha. The reason why I focus on Tosfos asking the kasha because I don't know how Gishmak the teretz is. But let's look at the kasha first. The Amr Harani Nazir miyayin im loy masnizin the katani Harani Nazira pirish Harani Nazir miyayin kach b'shvila. So this is no more anything to do with the last mission. It's a real proper Nazirs. The question that we're focusing on here merely is was the Tanai triggered or not? So what Rava Fardined over Rabbi Bar Chama is you don't need any more that Harani Nazir miyayin im amda me'eleha, right? The problem is you can't stick in the word me'elah because there it was relevant that it should stand up by itself. Here he just said it generally, but we know what he meant. So that's why Rava for emphasize his own kasha. That's why Rava's mahalach is not shver anymore. It doesn't say me'elah. So Zok Tosfos, so be happy with that. Is that in the Moisav Alishna? What? Oh, so the Tosfos speaks out something very important. What's important is that his expression of his Tanai should be accurate. What happened? That there's no problem with saying Me'elah. Rava doesn't have a problem if after he made it Tanai, what occurred to be triggered, there he doesn't mind adding in the word Me'elah. But in the Nusach of his Tanai, that has to be accurate. There you cannot say Me'elah. So therefore he said in Rabbi Bar Chama it was an important part of the Tanai. No, because here he says if it doesn't stand up, but he said he didn't have to say Me'elah. Exactly. So his cheshbon is since he sees an animal. No, but the reason why it's a good Tanai is because since it's so obvious that this animal cannot get up on its own, this animal is not getting up. It refuses to get up. The Rishonim Tosfos speaks out. This animal is not going anywhere. So Im Lo only means I'm going to get it up because there's no other way it's going to get up. And then by some shocking surprise, the animal tries to get up. You're not once again asking the question why someone said something stupid. That's why the fish is on the wall. Why? Remember, it goes back to saying why is the fish on the wall? Right. So let's get it. So I want to get to that. So I want to get to that. It's only adding loy, not me'elah. It's only adding loy. The Belashon Mishnah im amda. It doesn't say im loy amda. It says im amda. Who moisev tevis loy? He's adding the word loy. So, but he didn't say it that way, right? Yeah. Because his main point is I'm going to show you that I can get it up. So therefore, I'm going to be a nozer if I don't get it up. The most direct way of saying that is I'll be a nozer if I don't get it up. You want to say I won't be a nozer if I get it up. That's an indirect way of saying it. He doesn't have to dare himself. Oh, I'm for sure going to get it to stand up. And you know how I'm sure I am that if I don't get it to stand up, I'll be a nozer. That's normally how you would make such a dare. Omar. So the last part, if it happened, it was under Me'elah, that's not such a big problem of saying Me'elah, because the Mishnah is not focused on what happened. We actually have to add the whole story of what happened. The Mishnah is only focusing on what he actually said, what his Tanai was. So if adding a loy is nishkeferlich. Adding a loy, which totally changes the meaning to make it the opposite, that's nishkeferlich. Me'elah, that's keferlich. I'm just reading the words of Tosfos, right? That's what Tosfos says. There's only one word, little word, loy, an aleph, and alamed, Shem Hashem. Don't worry about it. It's good. It's good. So Zog to Gemara. Yep. The Abish to Charangamishtu, and the cow got up by himself. So
We have the same. We have the same idea even in the Torah. We have the word loy. We have a krieg siv on loys, right? And they mean
right.
just the opposite, right?
That's right.
So it's easy to make a mistake. I have a problem with that because it's confusing. You have a lav,
Indeed.
right?
You have a lav that could not be a lav.
Right.
Yep. So, but the Gemara anyway has to abandon this shot. So now the Gemara is at the point where this has nothing to do with the previous Mishnah. It's just a shaila. Is this called triggering? Is this called triggering this the Nazirus or not? Correct Gemara. Let's see how it fits in with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Harein alai carbon. Para. Correct the Gemara. Where's anything a carbon? It's already Nazir. This is not even a case of when you were Makabal Nazirus about something that's not a Nazirus. This is a straight case of Nazirus. So Rabbi Yehuda doesn't fit in here at all. There's no way I could have possibly meant over here to make a carbon. Mika matbis bamidi. He didn't say any mention of the fact that he wants to bring a carbon. Ella, let's refine the pshat. Kagoyin de Omar, Hareini Nazir mi bisara imlay amda. You have this cow that's not getting up. It's adamant. It refuses to get up. And he's trying to get it up. So he said, Hareini Nazir mi bisara. I am going to be a Nazir from the meat of this cow if it doesn't stand up. So now, that was Rami Bar Chama, but Rami Bar Chama said im amda. We're saying now im loy amda, right? Hareini Nazir mi bisara im loy amda, and then va'amda me'ela. So now you have both features. You have the feature of the Tanai question, but you also have the feature of the Nazirus about something that's not subject to Nazirus, which was the last Mishnah. So now we can mix everything together. Hareini Nazir mi bisara im loy amda, and then va'amda me'ela. V'shamei savri turfei dehu gavra mishum ukma biyadeyu v'haloi ukma. So therefore it triggered it nigh, and Beishamei Lushitasi holds that even a Nazir from Basar is a good Nazirus. Ubesilol savri turfei de gavra mishum derevia v'kam. And therefore you didn't trigger it nigh, so there's nothing here at all. So it's mashma that Basil holds. Why is he not a Nazir? Because he didn't trigger it nigh. But think about it. According to Basil, even if he triggered it nigh, it wouldn't be a Nazir. Because in last Mishnah he already told us that if you say Hareini Nazir mi basar, it's not a Nazirus. Freit the Gemara Basil Savri Eloi come to have a Nazir, but Amri mi basar Eloi have a Nazir. Basil regardless holds it's not a Nazirus. So what does it mean? Dafke if he says Dafke because it wasn't the kind of Tanai, regardless, even if the Tanai wasn't Muklim, even if there was no Tanai, and someone just said already knows it'll be Besara, according to Beis Hillel, it's considered a Chazara, Neder, Pischa Imoy. So Akimar, you're right. Beis Hillel is speaking with Tamai to Beis Shammai. According to Beis Hillel Avada, there's no Shaykhis to Nazirus here. But Latamai to Beis Shammai Ka'amri is what Beis Hillel is saying. Lidi done, according to us, according to Beis Hillel, Afida loy come, even if this animal never got up, Nami loy have a Nazir. It wouldn't be a Nazir, because Hareini Nazir mi basar is not a good Nazirus, as Beis Hillel said in the previous Mishnah. But even you, Beis Shammai, who hold that such a Nazirus is a good Nazirus, at least agree to me that the Tanai here had not been triggered. The Ditchudam Risu have a Nazir, Oidulon Mias, the Turfe, the Haden Gavra, the focus of this man wasn't him getting it up, it's just that the cow should stand up. Mishum de Revia, because the cow was lying down. But comes it stood up, so therefore the Tanai was not triggered. And even you, Beis Shammai, hold that theoretically this could be a good Kabbalah Naziris. Here, let's say that the Tanai was not triggered. Beis Shammai, lav turfer de gavra mishum ukma biyadehu. Beis Shammai holds, isn't the turfer, isn't the focus of this man that I'm going to have the strength to get it up? And even though this animal stood up, v'haloi ukma, I wasn't able to get it up. And since I wasn't able to get it up, it did trigger the Tanai, and such a type of Naziris is a good Kabbalah Naziris, and therefore it's a Nazir. So this is such a confusing Gemara because some guy decided to come up with this wacky expression of projecting what he's thinking on the cow.
Yeah, well, what happened to the Am Chacham V'Nova? How can they?
Chacham is smart, Novin is an Arba Chacham. Mati, what are you saying? Between Rava and Rabbi Chama? No, Rava's last case and the case before. The case before, he was saying Hareni Nazir Miyayin, but there was no mention of a carbon here. So therefore, how could Rabbi Yehuda say that the question of Vaishamai is whether or not it becomes a carbon? Now that he said Hareni Nazir Mi B'Sara, he says I'm being a Nazir from the Basar, and though it's Koinim Alai Basar Zeh. So Rabbi Yehuda, just like in the last Mishnah, held that Toifus Loshen Achron. When we said Mi B'Sara, we say it's like he made a neder not to have a Noah from the Basar. So Rabbi Yehuda is going to learn that Vaishamai Shita in this case was, since he triggered the Tanai, not that he becomes a Nazir, he triggered the Tanai, it'll be usher for him to have a Noah from that meat. Correct. Just like in the previous Mishnah, he was only answering the Groigris, he wasn't being Makabal Naziris. So that's why we have to modify it, because we have to figure out who did. So let me ask you a question. This animal's not getting up. I can't get it up, but I'm so sure I'm going to get it up. And because of that, I make a Tanai. If I can't get it up, I'll be a Nazir. Isn't there a rule of Smachta like Kanya? I was sure I'd be able to get it up. Had I known that I wouldn't be able to get the power to stand up, I wouldn't have been Makabal. I just like a figure of speech. I'll make you a bet. So how come you don't have a problem here of a smachta loy kanya? So the Chuvas Rashba says a moyer de kechiddush, and he says when it comes to hekdish, there is no such thing as a smachta loy kanya. So for instance, if a yeshiva is making a lottery and the proceeds go straight to the yeshiva or a Chinese auction, or even if the yeshiva hosts a kvitlach night, but the all of the proceeds go to the house, there's no halacha of a smachta loy kanya. So any type of weird t'nai that you make when you want to give tzedakah, every type of weird t'nai that you make when you want to make something hektish, there is no rule, and who adin for a kabbalas naziris, which we say is like hektish, there's no din of a smachta loy kanya. A smachta loy kanya is only in a case where it's for personal. So if there's a kvitlach game and whoever wins says I'll give it to tzedakah, that's not a smachta loy kanya. Only if automatically the winnings are tzedakah. It has to be automatic. It has to be that it's been given hektish. So therefore, yeshivas are allowed to make these type of lotteries and things because there's no problem of a smachta loy kanya. I would have never bought a ticket for $120 if I didn't win the minivan, right? When it comes to tzedakah, there's no problem of a smachta loy kanya. That's right, and the Rashi being derived from our Gemara that there's no din of a smachta loy kanya when it comes to tzedakah. But when it comes to everything else, there isn't a smachta loy kanya. Okay, so we'll stop here. Have a wonderful day. I finally came on time enough that we finished on time.